Thanks for being here. I am super excited about this topic actually, because as I was doing my research, I'm like, it is just such uh a good topic to talk about to kind of like clear up. I think there's so much confusing and also can be overwhelming information out there. And not that who am I to say I'm the expert on this, but just my personal experience and all the years I've trained, plus the research, plus what I've learned, I feel like I have a pretty good handle on how to prioritize and where to focus your energy. So anyway, we'll dive in, but I'm excited about this topic. So let me make sure. Yes, I'm recording. Let me put it on you. Okay, and I'm going to share my screen a little bit just for one slide today. Most of it I won't be sharing slides, but so anyway, let's jump in. Thanks for being here today. You guys, we're talking about cardio training and how do we really break through all the noise out there about what is the best type of cardio and how much should you do if your goal is to optimize health and longevity. So there's a bunch of experts out there talking about this stuff. You may have heard of Peter Attia. He has been blowing up zone 2 training, and that's like really the holy grail of training, and that's going to get you all these health benefits. But then there's Stacy Sims, who's kind of an expert in training for women. And she's like, no, women shouldn't do zone 2. They need to do sprint training because that's going to build power and strength. And so is it really that vast of a difference of who's right and who's wrong? And does it matter men or women? And let's go through all that. So first I'm going to share my screen and just we're going to go through the basics of what the cardio zones are, just to make sure everyone's on the same page of what they're called and what those zones actually mean. So can you guys see my screen here? Oops, not now because I just hit the wrong button. Sorry, I need to redo that one more time. Okay. I had it and then it went away. What happened? Give me 1 second. I'm gonna have to trim this out of well, I'll just do this view right here. You guys can see this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we have our cardio zones, and there's 5 of them. Now, if you do Peloton, they break their zones into 7, not to confuse the matter even more. But for today, we're talking about 5, which is what most people talk about when they're talking about cardio zones. So zone 1, we don't talk about too much in working out because zone 1 is not, in my opinion, technically exercise. It is activity. That would be a walk, would be zone 1. And we want zone 1 in our life, but that's just not what our workouts are made up of. So zone 1 can be good for a warm up, a cool down. It's daily activity, it's walking, but the intensity is not enough to even improve your aerobic base, but it's great part of your overall daily activity. So zone 1, we're not going to talk about much today, but just know that that's what it is. Zone 2, we consider light aerobic exercise, and zone 2 is typically 60 to 70% of your max heart rate. Now, we talked on another hot topic call about getting a VO2 max test done. And one of the benefits of getting that test done is you will know your exact heart rate zones so that you can get more specific with your training. If you don't know your zones, you just can estimate that. But as we'll talk about later, I think a lot of people get their zone 2 and zone 3 is kind of mixed up. And it's pretty important to know which zone you're in. So zone 2, it's your aerobic base work. It's long and steady, and you could do it for hours. As a matter of fact, if you do zone 2, you might be done and sort of feel like, was that really a workout? Was that hard enough? Did I push myself enough? Because it feels somewhat easy. You should be sweaty, you should be breathing, but it doesn't feel like, oh, I'm so tired from that workout. It kind of feels like, hey, that was light. I feel good. That is the point of zone 2. You're working at a low enough level that you can burn fat as fuel, and that's one of its main benefits. Every other type of exercise, lifting, higher intensity exercise, you're burning more carbohydrates. But we want to be able to burn our fat as fuel as well. And it trains our body to be able to go back and forth between burning fat and burning carbs. If you're wanting to lose weight, having your body's ability to burn fat is key. Now, zone 2 takes more time. It is not as efficient, which is one of the reasons why it may not be the thing to lean into most, but it is still a very handy zone to work in. It also doesn't cause fatigue. A lot of people get zone 2 and zone 3 sort of interchanged. Their zone 3 is also aerobic, meaning you could do it for a long time using oxygen. You're not going to get fatigued where you have to stop. But zone 3 is going to build a lot more fatigue and also not burn as much fat. So it's really not giving you that much better results, but it's going to make you fatigued and is more likely to cause overtraining. So the difference between zone 2 and zone 2, you burn more fat. You can do it for longer and it's not going to pile on to fatigue of your week. Zone 3 burns more carbohydrates and will be more fatiguing. They both build aerobic endurance. I hope that kind of makes sense. Zone 4 is hard. This is what I always refer to as the VO2 max zone. This is 80 to 90% of your max heart rate, and it's really trying to push your upper limit. Your body at some point of cardio switches from using oxygen, which is aerobic, as energy to glucose, which is anaerobic. Your VO2 max is the highest level you can work and still be in your aerobic system, but it's very hard. You're puffing and puffing, you're breathing hard, and it's not something you want to do more than a pretty short period of time. So in our BFR program, we do these 1 day a week. These are our VO2 max intervals, and they're usually 3 to 4 minutes. Sometimes I'll vary them a little more or less, but 3 to 4 minute intervals that you really want to be done by the time you get to 3 to 4 minutes. And then you want to recover and repeat those. Those are that zone 4. And then zone 5 is basically your hardest effort. These are done in like seconds. Like I don't think you can go more than 20, 25 seconds truly in zone 5 before you start getting fatigued. So zone 5, we do want to touch on, this is what Stacy Sims talks about with SITS training. It's zone 5. The key with zone 5, you want to keep the work really short. You want to keep the recovery long so that you can fully recover, because we're trying to hit our max output. If our recovery is too short, we're not going to be able to get to that max output. So we'll talk a little bit more about recovery, but I think those of you who've heard about Tabata has kind of confused these a little bit, because Tabata is short sprints, but with short recovery. And what happens when you do Tabata, maybe the first one is in your max zone 5, but it's impossible to recover enough to keep doing that max effort. So not really what I recommend for zone 5. You want that long recovery. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing this part of our screen. I can always bring that up later if people want to look at that again. So those are our zones. Let's talk a little bit more about some of the differences. So I talked about the difference between zone 2 and zone 3. So just to reiterate that, because I do think that is important, is zone 2 builds aerobic fitness without causing more fatigue in your body. It doesn't produce cortisol. Zone 3 is going to produce cortisol. Now, cortisol is not bad in and of itself, but too much cortisol every day, which is our stress response, when we have too much cortisol and it becomes chronic, that is very negative to our overall health. And remember, workout stress and life stress, your body doesn't know the difference so much. If you have too much stress on top of stress on top of stress, that's when we start getting injured, sick, we break down, we're fatigued all the time. So I prefer to do zone 2 work that is going to build our aerobic base, teach us to use fat without hitting fatigue, because we want to save our energy for the zone 4, zone 5, and also our strength training, which kind of goes in that higher level. We want to have high intensity days and low intensity days, and we sort of want to get rid of the middle intensity days. The tricky part is most women, not the people in this program necessarily, most women spend almost all their time in zone 3 because it feels harder. It feels like you're doing the work, but it's not that high intensity, but it's like hit after hit, 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, where you're not getting enough recovery. So you're in this moderate intensity and it's building cortisol. So especially through midlife, menopause and beyond, our hormones, cortisol becomes a bigger problem for us. So that's why maybe it worked when you were younger. When you get older, you really want to protect your energy. We want to focus on high intensity when we have those days, and then we want to focus on recovery without stacking any more fatigue. What's the difference between HIIT training and SIT training? So high intensity interval training or sprint training. High intensity interval is a bigger bucket. sit training is very specific to that max effort. It's very short. I like 15 to 20 seconds, 25 seconds maybe, with a long recovery. HIIT is a more blanket statement of just intense, high intensity recover, high intensity recover. I do think doing too short of recovery is a big mistake that a lot of people make when they're doing HIIT training, especially women, because for women, we want to prioritize type 2 muscle fiber and we want to prioritize power, which sprint training will do. When I say sprint, I don't really mean running. I mean effort. Could be on a bike. You want that high intensity, longer recovery. For men, I mean, if you think about it, the difference between women and men, and my personal bias is all the zones have value, and our bodies need to be able to do different zones. The whole point of training our body is to make it adaptable to different stressors. So we want to do a variety. And I think men and women both need that. Men, though, have an easier time. This is generalization, easier time building muscle and hanging on to muscle. And they often have less endurance. Women naturally are more endurant and have a harder time hanging on to muscle. So women can need to focus a little more on the high intensity and sprint interval side of things, and men a little more on the endurance side of the equation. But I don't go so far to say as men should only do endurance and women should only do the high intensity. I do think everyone benefits from a mix of that. So with all of that, I can feel overwhelmed. Like, how am I going to have time to do zone 2, zone 4, zone 5, my strength, my off days? Like, it feels like a lot. So how do we really prioritize? So one big takeaway is that, and this is what you'll see in the research, and a lot of people are talking about this now, you're going to get more bang for your buck with higher intensity training and shorter amount of time. So if time is your limiter, you want to focus on high intensity. If you're an endurance athlete, of course you need to do zone 2 training. It is the basis to build your aerobic foundation. But for just health and longevity, we want to focus, if you're short on time, on those higher intensity. If you have more time, that's when you start bringing in the zone 2 to complement your higher intensity. Because the rub is, I feel like people land on two ends of the spectrum. They're either struggling to get enough exercise in, or they're like, I'm on it. I'm working out every day. I'm working out hard, and they're overdoing the intensity. And this can lead to chronic fatigue. This can lead to low thyroid. It's this chronic stress response that your body's having. So if you want to work out 6 days a week, that's fine, but you need to make sure some of those days are that low intensity zone 2. So the answer to what zone cardio you should do really lies in how much time you have in the week to dedicate towards your cardiovascular training. So I'm going to break this down super simply to a little graph. I should have written this down, but I can send this to you guys afterwards. One caveat to what I'm about to say is, if you're truly a beginner to exercise and you have kind of zero aerobic base, you haven't done hardly any exercise, then you will want to start with some zone 2 aerobic base building before you jump right into the high intensity. We want to build some level of fitness. But I'm talking as if most people on this call already do some fitness. They're in decent shape and they're trying to look at optimizing their plan. Okay. So here are my recommendations. If you work out 2 days a week and that's all you have time for, you want both of those days, and especially if you're a woman, but I would say either way, you want both of those days to be committed to strength training. Building muscle, building bone, especially midlife and older, is our number one strategy to stave off all kinds of things, metabolic disorders, sarcopenia, losing our independence, losing our ability to metabolize sugar. We want to focus on strength training. If you have 3 days a week to train, I would do 2 days of strength and 1 day of our zone 4 VO2 intervals. If you're a beginner, I would do 2 days of strength and then I would do 1 day of zone 2. So beginner, do the lower level to build your base. But if you're already relatively fit, you would want to focus on that zone 4 workout to get the most bang for your buck out of that. That's going to help mitochondria. That's going to increase strength and power, as well as cardiovascular health and improving VO2 max. If you have 4 days, which is what I ideally recommend in our BFR program, it's what you'll see in our advanced our advanced grid on our website. 3 days of strength And in one of those days, you'll also add in some sprints. Sprints don't have to take a long time. When you do sprints, 4 or 5 sprints is plenty because we're going for a high output and it's very fatiguing if you're really pushing yourself. If sprints don't work for you because it's just too hard, then I'd bring that down to a VO2. So if you're doing 4 days a week, you have 3 strength days, add sprints if you can handle it. If you can't, just 3 days of strength. And then your 4th day is going to be the zone 4 VO2 max, 3 to 4 minute intervals with 3 minutes or so recovery. That's your 4-day kind of ideal plan. Once you've hit those 4 days, if you want to add more days of exercise, which is not bad because we want to be active, we want more volume, I would not do anything in the high zones. I would commit to zone 2 for those other days. Zone 2 is going to burn more calories for you in your week. It's going to help utilize fat. It's going to be great for active recovery and recovering that lactate that we build up all week. It's going to help your muscles recover faster. And it's more volume. And volume is good to build our aerobic base as long as it's not piling onto the fatigue. So we have the 4 primary goal days of high intensity and strength. And then beyond that, we want to add zone 2 as we have time. When I do my zone 2, I made the mistake, and a lot of people do this, as I said, of my zone 2 days. I think often I would be doing zone 3, and you can throw in a little zone 3 here and there if you want, where you push yourself harder, but I've changed my thinking now where I focus on intensity on my 4 hard days. And I think of zone 2 as active recovery. It's pretty easy. I'm sweaty, but I feel good. I feel energized after that workout, not depleted. And so it's a great thing to add in on those extra days. Okay. Last thing we're going to talk about is how do you add BFR into cardio? And then we're going to move into conversation and questions. So what's the deal with BFR with cardio? So if you think about what BFR does for us, it's teaching our body to work without oxygen. It's taking oxygen away from our muscles, minimizing the amount of oxygen our muscles are getting during exercise, and teaching us to work with glucose, which is great because we want to use glucose for energy when we're doing strength training. We want to use glucose for energy when we're doing high intensity training. It helps lower insulin sensitivity. It helps build muscle, all these great things. But we also want our body to know how to work with oxygen. That's how we work every day. That's our daily activity. That's our low intensity aerobic. We want to be able to work with oxygen. Our body wants to be adaptable. The reason why I think BFR is so great is because most people are better at working with oxygen and they don't spend much time in anaerobic, and BFR helps us get there. But if we're talking about optimizing our cardio training, if I'm doing zone 2, I'm not going to do that with my BFR bands because the whole point of zone 2 is teaching our body how to better use oxygen and utilize fat for energy. If we put our BFR bands on, we're not going to be using as much oxygen. We're not going to be using fat for fuel. So zone 2, no BFR bands. If you're doing the sprints, the zone 5, the highest intensity, short sprints, long recovery, I used to try those with BFR bands and I think it's okay, but I've actually now gone down to we're really trying to get our max effort in that. And if you're wearing the bands, you're not going to be able to use your max effort. You're not going to be able to recover as fully. And so for sprint training, I also don't use my bands. I go for how hard can I go without the bands? I need to fully recover to be able to go hard again. The place where I will tend to use my BFR bands are the VO2 max workouts. We're trying to increase the maximum amount our body can work with oxygen, but by using the bands, our oxygen reserves are less, and it teaches our vascular system to become more flexible and deliver oxygen more quickly. Now, there could be arguments you still might want to do a VO2 max workout sometimes without your bands. Sometimes I'll start with the bands on for the first half of the workout and then finish without them for the second half. And you'll notice you can do way, way higher watts without the bands on your VO2 max. So I think it's good to play with both. But one of the benefits of the BFR bands with cardio is it makes your vascular system more efficient, and it really causes mitochondrial biogenesis, where the mitochondria is working with less oxygen to deliver to the cell. So they get real efficient at doing that. So I think it's good to add in 1 day a week for your cardio. The rest of the cardio days, I do not use my BFR bands, and I use them on my strength days, my one kind of VO2 day. And that's how I round up my week. So 4 days is 3 to 4 days is kind of what we recommend in our program. And then if you have extra credit from there, your extra credit is zone 2. I think that's all I have to say on my notes. So I'm going to open up to Q&A and bring it back to, I think I muted you guys for the recording, but you can all unmute yourself if you have a question. Hey, Pick. Good to see you. So we got, and hey, Nancy, I know you jumped in midway. So, and SK, I believe, is on. So how was that? Was that helpful? Any questions? Is anything still confusing? Pick, your nod in your head. What do you think?
Oh, I thought it was really interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I'm honestly, I'm still kind of like digesting all of it.
Process.
Yeah, it's great. That was
Oh,
super helpful.
I will send out, I shared the one screen of the cardio zones, but I'll create another slide with my kind of recommendations of how many days you're working out a week and what you should focus on. So you guys can all have that. Because I think that's handy just to refer back to in your mind. And if one week you have 6 days to work out and the other next week you only have 2, you would change your priorities in that week. And anytime you have less time to work out, you want to focus on the strength and then the HIIT and then the zone 2. So kind of in that priority order. Allison, any thoughts? I know you listen to Stacy Sims a lot. What do you think? What questions do you have?
I don't listen to Stacey Sims a lot, but I have listened to her a
Okay.
little. Yeah, I think I'm just I think my questions are all around like personal stuff of like, yeah, I'm not sure I struggle a little bit with um how to how to know for myself like when I'm doing what, like,
Mm-hmm.
and
I mean,
I
you
think
mean in
also,
terms of the cardio zones, in terms of where you at, or are you talking about?
yeah, yeah. Um, like it doesn't feel totally intuitive to me still necessarily.
Yeah, I would say
Zone.
I agree. Zone 2 is not intuitive. I mean, I've been in fitness forever and I'm still like figuring out. Actually, just this year with my VO2 test, I figured out I was going way too hard on my zone 2 days. I was doing Peloton endurance rides, zone 2 and 3, but I was always trying to be in my zone 3. I
Mhm.
realized that, like, again, it feels like a better workout. So it is kind of counterintuitive, but the zone 2, the harder you work, your body doesn't have the time to break down fat for fuel. And so if you're working harder, you're never really using fat as a fuel source, which is it's a good thing that we want for long-term weight maintenance, is our body to be able to use fat for fuel. And the other big thing I realized is if you're working out hard the other day and then you're doing zone 3 on your off days, it's just cumulative fatigue. So like if you measure your HRV, for example, that's going to go down. You need recovery days to get your HRV back
Mhm.
up, or it's going
Mhm.
to lead to burnout. It's going to lead to cortisol. It's going to lead to injury. So really zone 3, unless you're an endurance athlete, there's not much value there. So I would say either do a VO2 max test or if you have a Peloton, they have that handy power zone test, and that'll kind of give you your zone.
Mhm.
If they go up to zone 7,
Yeah.
I just always stay in zone 2 now. Even on the endurance workouts that say to go zone 3, I'm always staying in zone 2 there. And that has helped me.
Yeah.
And I also notice when I do that, I do burn a little bit more fat. I can tell I lean out if I'm doing more of the zone 2 more than I do, which is counterintuitive. The other thing for women I wanted to say, I forgot to say earlier, and this hit me, someone just told me this recently. If you're doing zone 3 a lot and you're not fueling properly, you're not eating right, you're not eating enough, you're not eating carbs, you will start to burn protein and muscle. So a lot of women who spend a lot of time doing cardio, they end up burning muscle because they're not fueling for it. Where if you're in zone 2, you can work off of your stored fat for energy. You're not going to burn muscle. So to me, that was a huge insight for women in particular.
Yeah, that's huge.
Right. So that's the overtraining of zone 3, because we're into carbs, and a lot of women don't eat a lot of carbs, or maybe they work out fasted state. And if you're working out too hard, your body needs fuel and it can't break down fat when you're working out harder. It just doesn't have the time to go through lipolysis and get the fat cells for energy. So that's where the zone 2 is really valuable in using fat as energy and not turning to muscle if you're not fueling properly. But
And then the
question more-
difference
yeah, go ahead.
I think the other thing is just the different, because I think for me, like mentally, like going really hard, like the maxing out is outside of my comfort zone generally, like no pun intended.
Yeah.
So I think I struggle too a little bit with sprints versus VO2 max too. Because I think both of those are going to be really uncomfortable. And so
Yeah.
like how much uncomfortable. And so then is it just do a VO2 max test and then or like what would you
That's
say
a
to
good,
that?
it's a good point in talking about uncomfortable. And so that's partly why I said if you can't do sprints, don't worry about that. Focus on the strength days and then focus on VO2. Even VO2. So sprints are harder in the moment, but they're short and then you get long recovery. So not to me as mentally difficult, but they're physically hard. The VO2 is probably the most mentally hard. So what I would say, if you're intimidated by those and enough that it makes you be like, I'm not going to do it, just do it at a little lower intensity that you can do successfully. You'll still build. The other thing you can do is instead of a 20-second sprint, if that feels like too all out, you can play with like 30 seconds to a minute intervals and taking longer recovery. I mean,
No, I think I think you're totally hitting,
right. It's like, yeah, go
but
ahead.
you're hitting on something for me, which is actually, I do think the all out sprints are easier for me. Like I can get up for 20 seconds and like push pretty hard. I get that. That is not as intimidating to me as the VO2 max stuff.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
And so I guess one question would be like thinking in terms of the program. If I feel like, because I mean, like the strength stuff, I feel very comfortable going forth and strengthening. But if I feel like what's in the workout for the VO2 max feels intimidating, how would you recommend, how would you recommend dialing that up with the idea of working up to like what you're asking
Great
for?
question. And I love this question because I think you're probably not the only one that feels this way. So I think it applies to a lot of people. I would shorten the interval time. So maybe you start with 1 minute and the 1 minute, it's not a sprint, but it's still hard and it's challenging, but it's doable. And then increase that time to 2 minutes and then, see if you can eventually get to 3 minutes. Again,
you're matching that push with like how much, like if I was going to do that, do you dial it back like kind of the ratio, the same ratio?
Like recovery?
It's like I'm just looking at this week's and it's 3 minutes hard, 2 minutes easy. Would it be like 1 minute hard, 45 seconds easy? Or
no, if you're doing 1 minute, I do still at least 1 minute rest.
Okay.
I'd go 1. And a lot of times if it's 4 minutes hard, we'll do 3 minutes recovery. 2, and if it's 2, I'll usually do 2 and 2. So it's almost like you could do 1 minute rest, 2 minutes on, 2 minute rest, 3 minute on. You could do 3 minute rest. You could also increase the rest. If you felt like that was helpful. And you can also reduce the number if just doing 2 of them. 2 3-minute ones, to get. And what I've noticed for me, because I don't necessarily love doing VO2 either. Honestly, by me doing this program for you guys, I've been way more consistent with doing these kind of workouts because I feel like I'm got to practice. And now that I've done them more, I am more motivated to do them than I used to be because I feel like this huge sense of accomplishment. And I do feel better physically. And it's just kind of this positive reinforcement loop. So anytime you're trying something new, you want to bring it down so it's easier. So that's why I love this question. Start with 1 minute intervals, 1 on, 1 off, and then try to bump those up to maybe 2 and 2 or do the 3 minute, but only do 2 of them. Make it something where you feel like it's a little bit of a reach, but not a crazy reach, because you want it to be doable. And then once you have success with that and feel like you've had some wins and you've been consistent, then just increase a little bit. That's behavior change science, the goal has to be doable, not feel out of reach. So make the goal doable. Second is get some consistency with that doable goal that builds confidence, and then you can expand it a little bit more. So a gradual approach. So
And do you do the VO2 max all pretty consistently on the bike?
I do because
Yeah.
I can't run because of my hip. Sometimes I'll
Yeah.
do them if I'm at the gym, I'll do them on the Stairmaster or the step mill.
Oh yeah.
But I usually the bike's the easiest for me to hop on and do it. Yeah. I know
Yeah.
some people don't have cardio equipment, so that makes this conversation difficult, but you can always go to the gym. Even if
Yeah.
walking is a big form of exercise for you, make sure you're either walking really fast or adding hills in. That can help increase intensity. Flat walking is typically more of a zone 1 activity, so you can definitely add that in. Stairs, if you have stairs around, that can be a good way to do more of these interval type things. But a
Mhm.
bike is probably takes the lowest skill and is the safest and easiest if you have access to a bike.
Yeah.
Ashley.
Cool.
Yeah. Nancy, yeah.
Hi, Ashley.
Hi, Nancy. I was just going to call on you.
Oh, well, I really am loving this. Is it okay to do strength and level 2 on the same day?
Oh, that's a great question. And I did have that in my notes and I forgot to say. I was going to say, yes, especially with our BFR work that are kind of short. I know some people feel like I want to do more in my day.
Yeah.
But we don't necessarily want to add on more intensity because the
Yeah.
beauty of BFR is it increases human growth hormone without adding too much cortisol. So long story short, Nancy, you're right. Add some zone 2 to get some extra calorie burn, extra aerobic base, extra sweat without adding more fatigue on top of.
Yay. That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's my favorite. Those are my favorite days.
Yeah.
And then when you're talking about sprints, that can mean like for whatever trainer's video you're watching that day, that could be like jumping jacks or jumping around. Are those the sprints, or are sprints on like the Peloton?
So we do throw some cardio in the workouts, like jumps and
Yeah.
and that's great. That is a type of HIIT training.
Yeah.
I find those type of movements really to do a sprint. It's hard to do those. It's easier to do it on a bike because you'd have to be working at pretty maximal speed, and that's challenging on joints and the body and stuff like that. So those are great, just like HIIT workouts. And again, when I talk about HIIT versus sit's just more specifically that you're going for max. HIIT is still a good workout. HIIT just means maybe your intensity is not quite as hard and your recovery maybe not quite as long, but it's more like that. Like you're saying, do jumping jacks for 30 seconds, recover 15 seconds, then do something else. And you're still elevating the heart rate, recovering. That's an interval. You're going harder than you can sustain, and then you're recovering harder than you can sustain. So again, not to confuse things, but that is a good way to approach HIIT training. If not everyone can do sprints, it's either too hard on the body, you don't have the right equipment, it's pretty intense. I wanted to talk about sits because there's a lot of talk about that out there and kind of what that is.
I don't even know what that is.
But it just means sprint, which means like maximal effort in like 20 seconds. And so
okay.
It's hard to hit that. It's hard to hit that with body weight exercise, I find.
Yeah.
So, but the stuff you're talking about is definitely still going to be a good high intensity training that you can do within your strength workout days.
Okay. And did you also say, or did I misunderstand, that if you're doing strength,
Yep,
3 to 4 days every week, one of those days you could also do a VO2 max?
yes, I would recommend 3 days of strength and VO2 max. If you're doing strength 4 days a week with BFR or 3 days with BFR and 1 without, you could double up. I would just make sure check in how you feel energy wise, because doing a BFR workout and then a VO2 max might be too much in the same day.
Yeah.
What I sometimes do is I'll do my VO2 cardio first, and then I'll do some isolated BFR. Like I'll just pick arms or glutes or core and just order maybe 8-minute burn focused workout to get some strength, but not like a full body BFR.
Awesome. Okay, that is helpful. Thank you.
So yeah, so you just want to, you're looking at your workouts partly from an energy system standpoint. So not just what activity you're doing, but how hard is it on your body from a metabolic standpoint.
Yeah.
And bar is hard on your body, is hard on your metabolic system. High intensity, VO2 intervals, hard on your metabolic system. So you don't want to do a bunch of that in one day, and you don't want to do that every day. We need those recovery times in between.
Okay. Yeah, this is great. Good. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm finding it harder to do more of the VO2 max stuff as it's getting warmer outside. I'm having to go out to the gym like earlier and earlier because the heat. You really, for me with the bands, my God, I get hot. Like,
yeah,
made me love winter. I never was cold.
That's funny. Yeah. And, kind of to Allison's point, the VO2 is probably the hardest mentally cardio workout you can do. So give yourself grace around it. And if you want to shorten them, if you want to do less of them, if it's 1 week, it's particularly hot and you're feeling tired, make it a zone 2 workout. Like there's, I think adapting to how you feel and listening to how you feel is a really important part of it. And then also feeling motivated and successful versus feeling overwhelmed. So if something's feeling overwhelming and it's getting in the way of you doing it, then that's something to pay attention to and think, how can I make this less overwhelming? Those are also good things for, if you want to jump on a coaching call, we can brainstorm, that's what the coaching calls are great for, is to really dive into your particular weekly program and what to add, what to take out, where to focus.
Okay.
Because obviously in this group format, I think the weekly format is a really solid format to follow, but everybody's going to be a little different in their needs and their tolerance and their motivation in their goals. So that's where the tuning comes in.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question about that too. So I'm a very new Aura Ring user. Are you familiar with those two?
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm very much a newbie in tweaking what I need right now. And I'm like literally figuring it out, because last week I only did one BFR workout, but I went twice to the group exercise stuff. And then after the second time of that, like the next day it told me like, you need a break. Like my ring gave a warning for it. And I went, oh, well, that's interesting. Cause I didn't necessarily feel that.
Right. And how many of those how long are those workouts? The other one?
2 45-minute like weightlifting workouts. So I did one BFR like on Monday, and then Tuesday and Thursday I did I went to those two classes, 45 minutes of weight training. So it's heavier because it's not with bands.
Yeah.
And then Friday it's a chill out, take a break.
Okay. Interesting.
Nice, because I didn't feel that.
Yeah.
So,
it's good. That's why it's good to the HRV information can be good to really tailor how much you're doing. Cause I think Allison said that too. It's sometimes hard to feel if you're fatigued or not. And some of us are used to having a little bit of chronic fatigue and not noticing it.
Yeah.
Like, like we're used to pushing ourselves a lot.
Yeah.
So it is good. I think while you're using the Oura Ring, I'd be curious how that goes as you play around with different combination of workouts.
Yeah. And so I'm kind of starting to think like, okay, maybe I need to back off, like do more BFR and less of like, maybe that's where I need to tweak right now. So, but yeah, and I'm like, whoever was talking about like avoiding VO2 max stuff, like that stuff's hard. Like that's nobody wants to do, right? Like, so I really need to, but I feel like if I start adding now, my ring's really going to tell me, would you go take a nap?
Yeah, it's a good point about the VO2. I mean, I think, and it's given me good feedback on where people are getting stuck maybe and how to make that more approachable. But I think just shorten those intervals at first and make it less intimidating and just do the interval work. And that's still going to help your overall cardiovascular health. It'll be interesting. The one thing that's, I think why BFR, one thing is so effective is because it is the right amount of stimulus to get this human growth hormone response without being massively fatiguing. And so you get this positive spike without getting the negative fatigue that goes with some of the longer workouts. So I would be curious if you did a week where you did 2 BFR workouts and one of the other workouts, what would your ring say? Would it be better or? Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it's like I feel like this is like all very counterintuitive in a lot of ways. Like I feel like, oh, this is not how I've ever worked out ever, you know? So
Yeah. Yeah.
so like, hey, you want me to do what? Right?
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. I know it was a totally new paradigm shift for me too, but it's hard to ignore the benefits. And so
Which is what we all want. So
yeah, which is why I've kind of leaned into it so much. But like I said, everybody's different and different, depends on your age, depends on your fitness history, depends on genetic history, like how much volume is right volume for you, right? So I think what we have is a really good baseline of starting, and then let's just make little tweaks from there.
yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So I will follow up with sending everyone the cardio zones and then also kind of my grid of like recommendations for the week. And then I think I'm gonna think about the VO2 stuff a little bit and how to make those feel less intimidating for people.
I'm curious, Ash, also on the Zone 2 thing, because I haven't been on our Peloton in a while. Has Peloton added, like, in answer to Peter Attia asking for people to be doing Zone 2, have they added anything that they're kind of like quote unquote selling as Zone 2?
That's a good question. Well, I notice when I only do the Power Zone workouts on Peloton.
Yeah.
And I sometimes do. So they have Power Zone Endurance, which is, I think it's Zone 2 and Zone 3. And then there's Power Zone, which is basically Zone 4. And then there's Power Zone Max, which is like Zone 5. So they kind of cover that. But they do have some Power Zone Endurance where they only do Zone 2s now. And they don't even put you into Zone 3. So I think maybe that's in response to that. But
because I also like that would be helpful for me. Sometimes I really just like people to tell me what to do.
Yeah.
You know?
I would do the Power Zone Endurance on Peloton and just in your Zone 2. It's going to feel easy. It's not going to feel like you're pushing yourself, but that's the point. It's sort of this recovery.
No, and I'm the fat burning part of it is appealing to me too, because that's still working on that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I used to kind of think, well, if you're burning more calories, because you burn more calories at the harder work, if you're burning more calories, even if it's less fat, it's still calories, but it's different. Your body is training to use fat, and it needs to be at a lower intensity, or the fat can't break down fast enough and it goes right to carbs. So it's specifically because it's kind of easy that your body can use fat as the fuel. So when you're doing it, remind yourself like, yeah, this isn't supposed to feel that challenging. It's kind of this, you should be sweating, you're breathing, but you definitely can still talk. It doesn't feel, you're not sort of fatigued by the end. You could feel like you could do it for a couple hours. Yeah. So I've definitely shifted my zone down on that day, and I like it. I'm feeling better overall. So
yeah. All right.
Cool. Anyone else before we sign off? Kalia,
That's great. These are so great, Ashley. Like I feel like someone said it in the testimonials on the website, like something about like I don't know, I forget exactly, but it was talking specifically about these. And I can't always do live, but I've listened to most of them, and it's really great information. And the Q&A is also awesome because when I can join, I always have lots of questions. Like but also people ask really good questions. So I find this a really valuable piece of your program, actually. I really, really like it.
Thank you. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
I like doing them. It's fun. I get a deep dive into different things, and I've learned a lot by doing these too, to just really double check what I'm thinking. And so anyway, thank you for the feedback.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.